The arena was massive, built from dark metal and glowing with energy barriers. Thousands of aliens and humans sat in the audience, their voices blending into a roar of excitement. The Selvar, a warrior race covered in natural bio-armor, cheered for their champion. On the other side, the humans remained calm, their expressions unreadable. In the center of the arena stood Jakor, a young but proud Selvar warrior. His body was tall and strong, covered in sleek black armor that had grown from his own flesh. His species did not need weapons or metal plating. Evolution had given them all they required. Their natural armor was stronger than steel, their reflexes faster than most creatures in the galaxy. Before him stood Commander Darius Kane, the human warrior. Kane was encased in an advanced exosuit, a mechanical marvel of human engineering. The suit gleamed under the arena's lights, its power core humming softly. It was bulky compared to Jakor's sleek form, its joints reinforced with artificial muscles and hydraulics. Jakor laughed, a deep, confident sound. "You humans are so fragile. You cover yourselves in metal like insects hiding in shells. Without that armor, you are nothing." Kane tilted his head slightly, his expression hidden behind the reflective visor of his helmet. His voice, calm and amused, echoed through the arena. "You think so?" Jakor flexed his claws, his confidence growing. "I know so." The battle was not just a fight, it was a test of strength, speed, and skill between two species that had once been enemies. Now, as part of a fragile peace treaty, they held these ceremonial duels to prove their worth without war. The Selvar believed in natural selection. The strong survived, the weak perished. To them, humanity was weak, relying on technology instead of evolving their own strength. Jakor would prove that today. The arena's energy field shimmered, signaling the start of the fight. The crowd went silent for a brief moment before erupting into cheers. Jakor moved first, his legs propelling him forward at incredible speed. He was a blur, faster than most beings could react. He aimed straight for Kane's chest, claws extended. But Kane was ready. With a precise step, he dodged to the side, his exosuit assisting his movements. He twisted his body and brought up his armored fist, aiming a powerful counterstrike. Jakor barely had time to block before the impact sent him skidding backward. The young warrior's eyes widened. That hit had hurt. The human's armor wasn't just protection, it made him stronger. Jakor growled and charged again, this time moving unpredictably. He zigzagged, his claws flashing as he struck from multiple angles. Kane blocked each attack, his movements smooth and controlled. His armor absorbed the impact, and then, boom. Kane delivered a devastating kick to Jakor's midsection, launching him backward. The alien warrior crashed into the ground, dust and sparks flying. For the first time, doubt crept into Jakor's mind. This human, he wasn't slow, he wasn't clumsy, he was dangerous. The crowd roared as Kane took a step forward, rolling his shoulders. "You're quick," he admitted, "but you rely too much on your instincts." Jakor snarled, "And you rely too much on your machines." He launched himself again, this time striking with everything he had. His fists pounded against Kane's armor, his claws scraping against the metal surface. Sparks flew as he aimed for the human's joints, trying to find a weak spot. Kane didn't panic. He let the blows come, adjusting his stance, waiting for an opening. Then, with precise timing, he caught Jakor's arm and twisted, hard. The young warrior let out a sharp grunt as his own momentum betrayed him. He was flipped over Kane's shoulder and slammed into the ground once more. Pain shot through Jakor's body. He had never been thrown like that before. The human stepped back, giving him a moment to rise. "You're strong," Kane said, his voice steady. "But you're too used to winning." Jakor's pride burned. He pushed himself up, breathing heavily. "You think you've won." He spat. Kane chuckled. "Not yet." Jakor's mind raced. He had to change his strategy. He needed to turn this fight around. Then, an idea formed, a way to truly prove himself. He straightened, wiping a trickle of blue blood from his chin. "If you're truly strong," he said, "then take off your armor." The crowd gasped. The challenge was unheard of. A human without armor. It would be suicide. But Jakor wanted to see it. He wanted to expose the weakness of this species once and for all. Cain was silent for a moment. Then, to the shock of everyone, he laughed. "All right," the human said, reaching for his armor's release mechanism. "Let's see what you think after this." As the locks on his exosuit disengaged with a hiss, the entire arena watched in stunned silence. Zakor's confident smirk began to fade. Something told him he had just made a terrible mistake. Deep hush fell over the arena as Commander Darius Cain reached for the release mechanism on his exosuit. The once powerful hum of the armor's servos went silent. Small hisses of escaping pressure filled the air as the plating unlocked and detached piece by piece. The heavy chest plate dropped to the ground with a loud thud. The arm guards disengage. The leg supports power down. And then, standing there, completely exposed, was a human without armor. Zakor expected to see weakness. He expected to see a soft, fragile creature, something small and helpless beneath all that metal. But what he saw made his throat tighten. Cain was not fragile. His body was a masterpiece of raw muscle, each fiber carved from years of brutal training. Thick arms, powerful legs, and a torso lined with deep scars told a story of survival. Unlike the Tselvar, whose armor was a gift of evolution, Cain's strength was earned. The audience stared in stunned silence. Even the Tselvar warriors in the stands, once laughing and mocking, had fallen quiet. Zakor, for the first time in his life, felt something unexpected. Doubt. But he quickly shook it off, baring his sharp teeth. "So what? You're still just flesh and bone." He stepped forward, his bio-armor shifting slightly over his shoulders. "Without your machines, you have nothing." Cain rolled his shoulders, loosening his neck. His expression was calm, almost amused. "You're still thinking too small." Then he moved, faster than anyone expected. Before Jakor could react, Cain closed the distance with terrifying speed. The human ducked low, then surged upward, slamming his shoulder into Jakor's chest with the force of a charging beast. The impact sent the young warrior flying backward. He crashed onto the ground, skidding several feet before coming to a stop. Pain flared across his ribs. The crowd gasped. Jakor groaned and pushed himself up. His mind raced. How? Humans weren't supposed to be this strong. Not without armor. Not without weapons. But Cain was standing there, breathing steady, his muscles barely strained. "Still think I need the suit?" Cain asked, flexing his hands. Jakor growled and charged again, this time more cautious. He slashed with his claws, aiming for Cain's unprotected chest. But Cain saw it coming. With perfect timing, he twisted to the side, grabbed Jakor's arm, and used his own momentum against him. The next thing Jakor knew, he was flipping through the air. Slam! His back hit the ground hard. The air rushed out of his lungs. The crowd roared. Even the Tselvar warriors watching from the stands were stunned. Cain let go of his arm and stepped back, giving him space to rise. "You've relied on your armor all your life, haven't you?" the human asked. "You don't know how to fight without it." Jakor clenched his fists. His bio-armor had always been his strength. Since birth, it had protected him, made him powerful. Every Tselvar warrior trusted their armor. But Cain had no armor. And yet, he was winning. Jakor wiped blood from his mouth and steadied himself. "You're fast," he admitted. "Stronger than I thought." Cain smirked. "That's because humans don't rely on what we're born with. We train. We push ourselves beyond our limits. Every scar, every muscle, every skill. I earned it. He gestured to Jacor's bio-armor. But you were given your strength, and now that you're facing someone who fought for his, you don't know what to do. The words stung more than any hit. Jacor had never feared an opponent before. He had never questioned himself. But as he looked at the human before him, standing strong without any protection, he felt something unfamiliar crawl into his chest. A cold, uneasy feeling. Cain raised his fists again, ready for round two. The young warrior hesitated. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he could win. Thousands of eyes remained locked on the two warriors standing at the center of the battlefield. The Selvar spectators, once roaring with laughter and confidence, now sat frozen, watching the impossible unfold. Commander Darius Cain, the human, stood tall, without armor, without weapons, yet completely unshaken. Across from him, Jacor, the young Selvar warrior, felt something he had never known before. Doubt. His bio-armor shifted slightly over his body, adjusting to his tense muscles. He had fought many enemies before, strong, fast, powerful. But this human was different. Jacor clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe steadily. No, this is just another fight. He's still only flesh and bone. He took a step forward, rolling his shoulders, ignoring the ache in his ribs from Cain's earlier attacks. You think you're special because you're strong without armor. His voice was sharp, masking his unease. You're still weaker than me. Your body will break before mine. Cain tilted his head slightly, a small smirk on his lips. Then come and break it. Jacor snarled. He would not lose. With a burst of speed, he lunged forward, his claws slashing through the air. Cain didn't move. For a split second, Jacor thought he had caught the human off guard. His claws were inches from Cain's chest. Then suddenly, Cain sidestepped at the last moment. Jacor's attack hit nothing but air. Before he could react, he felt something slam into his side. Hard. A brutal fist drove into his ribs like a hammer striking stone. Pain exploded through his body as he stumbled sideways, gasping. The crowd erupted in shock. Jacor barely had time to recover before Cain struck again. This time, the human's knee smashed into his stomach, sending him flying backward. He hit the ground with a heavy thud, coughing as he tried to suck in air. What was happening? How was this human so strong? Jacor forced himself up, his vision slightly blurred. His bio-armor had absorbed some of the damage, but his body still ached. Cain was hitting harder than before. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Cain was getting faster. Without the weight of his exosuit holding him back, the human moved like a predator. Agile, efficient, terrifying. His muscles coiled and flexed with perfect control, every movement precise. Jacor had always believed that humans were only strong because of their technology. He thought without their machines, they were weak. He had been wrong. Cain wasn't relying on technology. He had surpassed it. Jacor gritted his teeth. He refused to lose. He could not lose. With a growl, he launched himself forward again, this time feinting left before striking right. He aimed a brutal elbow toward Cain's jaw, putting all his strength into it. Cain ducked. In the same motion, the human grabbed Jacor's arm and twisted. Pain shot through the young warrior's shoulder as he was spun around, completely off balance. Then, Cain lifted him off the ground. For the first time in his life, Jacor felt weightless. The human had thrown him, launched him, across the arena. He crashed onto the ground, his bio-armor cracking slightly from the impact. Dust and sparks flew around him. His body screamed in pain. The crowd gasped. Somewhere in the stands, an elder Xelvar warrior muttered, "Impossible." Jacor coughed, struggling to push himself up. His limbs felt heavy. His chest burned. And then, he felt a presence looming over him. Cain. The human stood just a few feet away, his breathing calm, his expression unreadable. Jakor's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to get up. He wanted to keep fighting. But his body refused. The truth was undeniable now. He had lost. Cain didn't attack again. He simply watched, waiting. Then, after a moment, he spoke. "You thought strength was something you were given," Cain said, his voice steady. "But real strength isn't a gift. It's something you earn." Jakor closed his eyes. He had spent his whole life believing that his natural armor made him superior, that his species was born to be warriors. But Cain had no armor, no natural advantage. And yet, he had won. Because humans didn't just rely on what they were given. They built themselves into something greater. Jakor took a slow breath and opened his eyes. His pride was shattered, but deep inside, something else stirred. Respect. For the first time in his life, he looked at a human, not as a lesser species, not as a weak creature relying on machines, but as a warrior. Cain extended a hand toward him, a simple gesture, an offering of respect. Jakor hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached up and grasped the human's hand. As Cain pulled him to his feet, the arena erupted in deafening applause. The fight was over. But for Jakor, a new lesson had just begun. The arena still shook with the sound of cheers. Thousands of voices echoed across the metallic walls, a mix of shock, admiration, and excitement. The humans celebrated their champion's victory, while the Selvar spectators sat in stunned silence, struggling to accept what they had just witnessed. Jakor was one of them. He stood there, breathing heavily, his bio-armor cracked in several places. His muscles ached, his pride burned, but his mind was in chaos. He had lost. To a human without armor. Just hours ago, the idea would have been laughable. The Excelvar were born for battle. Their bio-armor was stronger than metal, their reflexes honed by generations of warriors. Humans were weak, soft. They hid inside machines because they could not survive without them. That was what Jakor had always believed. But now, standing face to face with Commander Darius Cain, he knew that belief had been a lie. Humans were not weak. They were something else entirely. Jakor looked down at the human's hand, the same hand that had lifted him up after his defeat. A warrior's gesture, a sign of respect. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he tightened his grip and shook Cain's hand firmly. The crowd roared even louder. Cain smirked. "Not bad, huh?" Jakor exhaled sharply, a rough chuckle escaping his lips. "You fight well, for someone without armor." Cain grinned. "And you fight well, for someone who relies on armor." The words stung, but Jakor did not argue. He had spent his whole life believing that his bio-armor made him strong. But today, against an opponent who had no armor, he had been overpowered, outmaneuvered, and outmatched. Not because he was weak, but because Cain had trained harder. Because humans did not rely on strength. They created it. Jakor clenched his fists, looking down at the cracks in his bio-armor. "You humans, you train to be stronger, even when your bodies are weak." Cain nodded. "That's how we survive. We push beyond our limits. We don't accept what we're born with. We become better." Jakor thought about that. His people believed that strength was something given by nature, that the strongest would rise, and the weak would fall. But humans were different. They did not accept weakness. They changed it. Jakor exhaled and straightened his posture. "I underestimated you." Cain crossed his arms. "Most do." A loud voice interrupted them. "Jakor." The young warrior turned. His father, High Warlord Korvash, stood at the edge of the arena, his dark red bio-armor gleaming under the lights. His eyes burned with disappointment. Jakor swallowed hard. His father was one of the greatest Selvar warriors in history. He had never lost a battle. He had always told Jakor that Selvar do not lose. And yet, here he was, defeated, Corvash stepped forward, his voice cold. You have disgraced your name. The crowd fell silent. The Selvar warriors in the stands watched closely, waiting to see what would happen next. Cain frowned, but he said nothing. He simply observed. Jakor took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of his father's judgment crushing down on him. For his entire life, he had wanted to prove himself worthy, to stand among the greatest warriors, to earn his father's respect. But now, standing here, he realized something. This loss, it was not a disgrace. It was a lesson. Jakor met his father's gaze. His voice was steady. No, I have learned. Corvash's eyes narrowed. Excuses. Jakor shook his head. Humans are strong. Not because of armor, not because of weapons, but because they refuse to be weak. His father's expression darkened. You speak as if you admire them. Jakor exhaled. I do. Gasps filled the arena. Even Cain raised an eyebrow. Corvash's fists clenched. You are my son, a Selvar warrior, and yet you bow before this human. Jakor stood tall. I do not bow. I respect. Cain smirked. That's a start. The warlord's eyes burned with anger, but he said nothing. Instead, he turned sharply and walked away, his bio-armor shifting as he disappeared into the corridors. Jakor watched him go, his heart heavy. He knew he had disappointed his father, but for the first time, he was not ashamed. He turned back to Cain. Humans train to be strong. Will you train me? The crowd exploded with noise. Cain blinked, clearly surprised. You want me to train you? Jakor nodded. I want to become stronger, not just with my armor, but without it. Cain studied him for a long moment. Then he grinned. All right, but be warned, human training isn't easy. Jakor smirked. Good. I do not want it to be easy. Cain laughed. Then let's get started. As the crowd continued to cheer, Jakor took his first step towards something greater. Not just as a Selvar warrior, but as something more. The arena had emptied. The battle was over, but for Jakor, a new challenge had just begun. He stood in the dim training hall, the echoes of past warriors whispering through the metallic walls. The scent of sweat, steel, and determination filled the air. Commander Darius Cain stood beside him, arms crossed, a small grin on his face. You really want to do this? Cain asked. Jakor clenched his fists. I do. Cain raised an eyebrow. No bio-armor. Jakor hesitated. His bio-armor was his strength, his pride. Every Selvar warrior relied on it. But today, he had seen something stronger, a human who trained beyond his limits. He exhaled deeply, then placed a hand on his chest. His bio-armor shifted and retracted, disappearing beneath his skin. Now he stood as Cain did, bare, unprotected. Cain nodded approvingly. All right. First rule, humans don't wait for strength to come to them. We fight, we struggle, and we earn it. Jakor tightened his jaw. Then let's begin. The first trial, endurance. Cain led him outside the training hall, onto the rough, rocky terrain of the human military base. The heat of the twin suns burned down, making the ground shimmer. First test, running, Cain said, stretching his arms. You ever run without your armor boosting you? Jakor frowned. Why would I? My armor. Cain smirked. Exactly. Without waiting, the human started running. His muscles moved with precision, his breathing steady. Jakor took a deep breath and followed. At first, it was easy. He was a Selvar warrior, built for combat, trained for battle. But soon, his muscles began to burn. His breathing grew heavy. Without his armor's support, his body felt heavier, his legs slower. Cain, however, kept running effortlessly. How far do we run? Jakor panted. Cain grinned. Until your body screams at you to stop. Jakor growled. His legs ached. His lungs burned. His body screamed at him to stop. But he didn't. He forced himself forward, step by step, ignoring the pain. This is how humans train. By the time they stopped, Jakor collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. Kane stood over him, barely sweating. "You did good," Kane said, "for a beginner." Jakor let out a weak chuckle. "This is only the beginning." "Oh, absolutely." The second trial, strength. After a short rest, Kane led him to an open training ground. Large metal weights, climbing ropes, and massive obstacle courses stretched before them. Jakor frowned. "You use these to train." Kane grinned. "You thought we just became strong. No, we make ourselves strong." The training began. Jakor was used to relying on his bio-armor for power, but now it was only his muscles, his bones, his will. He lifted heavy metal weights, his arms shaking with effort. He climbed thick ropes, his fingers aching. He did push-ups, sit-ups, and squats until his body refused to move. And all the while, Kane pushed him. "Come on, you're stronger than this." Jakor growled, sweat dripping down his face. His muscles burned like fire. His body felt like it was breaking apart. But deep inside, something else burned brighter. Determination. Humans didn't stop when they were tired. They stopped when they were done. By the end of the day, Jakor lay flat on the ground, exhausted. Every muscle in his body ached. His breath was ragged. He had never felt so weak. Yet, at the same time, he had never felt so alive. Kane sat beside him. "You're starting to understand, aren't you?" Jakor turned his head, breathing heavily. This is why you're so strong." Kane nodded. "Pain is just the body's way of telling you there's more to give. You either listen to it, or you push past it." Jakor let the words sink in. He had always believed his armor made him powerful, that his body was already at its limit. But he was wrong. Humans proved that limits were meant to be broken. And now, Jakor wanted to break his own. The third trial, the human spirit. That night, as the stars stretched across the sky, Jakor sat alone, thinking. His entire body ached, his muscles trembled, but his mind was sharper than ever. Kane approached, handing him a metal cup filled with water. Jakor took it and drank deeply. "I always thought humans needed armor to be strong." Kane chuckled. "Most species do. But I see now." Jakor looked at his hands, calloused and bruised from the training. "You don't wear armor because you need it. You wear it because you choose to. Your true strength comes from here." He tapped his chest. Kane smiled. "Now you're getting it." Jakor exhaled, looking up at the night sky. "Tomorrow, we train again." Kane grinned. "Oh, you better believe it." Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, Jakor smiled. He was no longer just a Selvar warrior. He was something more. And he would not stop until he was stronger than ever before. The sun had barely risen when Jakor stood outside the human training grounds, his body still aching from the previous day's brutal exercises. His muscles screamed in protest, his limbs felt heavy, but he stood tall, because he was not done. Commander Darius Kane approached, arms crossed, a knowing smirk on his face. "Didn't expect you to be up this early." Jakor exhaled deeply. Humans don't stop when they are tired. They stop when they are done. Kane chuckled. Now that's the right mindset. Today's training would be even harder. Kane had promised as much, and Jakor welcomed it. The trial of speed. Kane led him to a long track stretching across the barren training field. The air was still cool, but the sun would soon turn it into an unforgiving furnace. "Speed is just as important as strength," Kane explained. "You can be the strongest warrior in the galaxy, but if you're too slow to react, you're dead." Jakor nodded. "Understood." Kane held up a small metal device. "This is a shock drone. It will chase you. If you slow down, It saps you. Simple, right? Jakor frowned. Simple, but painful. Kane grinned. Exactly. He pressed a button. The drone whirred to life, red lights glowing as it floated into the air. Then, with a sharp beep, it shot forward, straight toward Jakor. Jakor ran. His legs burned instantly, still sore from the previous day. His lungs felt tight, but he pushed forward, ignoring the pain. The drone was fast, too fast. It zipped behind him, closing the distance. Zap. A small jolt of electricity struck his back. Jakor gritted his teeth and forced his legs to move faster. Kane shouted from behind, "Don't just run harder, run smarter. Use your surroundings." Jakor's eyes darted across the terrain. The ground was uneven, small rocks scattered everywhere. He adjusted his footing, using the terrain to push himself forward. The drone missed. He smirked. Yes, this was working. For the next hour, he ran. Again and again. He dodged, adjusted, adapted, just like a human would. By the end, he collapsed to the ground, breathing hard but grinning. Kane walked over, nodding in approval. "Not bad. I think you're getting the hang of this." Jakor wiped sweat from his forehead. "What next?" Kane smirked. "Now, we fight." The trial of combat. Jakor followed Kane into the sparring ring. The area was surrounded by human soldiers, all eager to watch. Some of them had seen his fight in the arena. Others were simply curious. Kane stepped forward and stretched his arms. "You've trained your body. Now, let's see if you've trained your mind." Jakor cracked his knuckles. "I am ready." Kane assumed a fighting stance. No armor, no weapons. Jakor did the same. The battle began. Kane moved first, fast, faster than Jakor expected. A punch came toward his face. He barely dodged. Kane's knee struck next, hitting his ribs. Jakor stumbled back, growling. Kane smirked. "Come on. You've seen how humans fight. Show me what you've learned." Jakor charged. He swung his fist, but Kane dodged effortlessly. He tried again. Another miss. Kane countered with a quick jab to his stomach. Jakor gasped, stepping back. Think. His bio-armor had always done the work for him, absorbing blows, guiding his movements. But without it, he had to rely on his own instincts. He took a deep breath. Watch his movements. Predict. React. Kane attacked again. This time, Jakor was ready. He dodged to the side, grabbed Kane's arm, and flipped him over. The watching soldiers cheered. Kane lay on the ground for a second, then burst into laughter. "Now that's more like it." Jakor helped him up, breathing hard. Kane grinned. "You're learning fast." Jakor smirked. Humans are not the only ones who adapt. The final lesson. That night, after training, Jakor sat with Kane, watching the stars. His body was sore, his muscles ached, but inside, he felt stronger than ever before. Kane took a sip from his canteen. "You've changed." Jakor nodded. "I have." The young warrior looked at his hands, rough and bruised from training. He had always believed that strength was something given, through genetics, through armor, through tradition. But now he understood the truth. Strength is not given. Strength is made. And he had made himself stronger. Kane smirked. "So, what now? You planning to go back to your people?" Jakor thought about it. His father, his home, the warriors of the Telvar. They would never understand. Not yet. But one day they would. He clenched his fist. "No, I am not done yet." Kane grinned. "Good answer." As the stars twinkled above them, Jakor knew one thing for certain. He was not the same warrior who had laughed at human armor. He was something far greater, and he was only getting started. The twin suns of the human military base had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep red. Jacques stood at the edge of the training field, his muscles aching from days of relentless training. His body had been pushed to the limits and beyond. Yet despite the pain, he felt stronger than ever before. Commander Darius Kane approached, arms crossed. "Well, kid, you've survived." Jacques smirked. "I have done more than survive." Kane chuckled. "Yeah, you've changed. But now, there's one last thing to do." Jacques raised an eyebrow. "Another challenge." Kane nodded. "The final test. The ultimate test. One last battle." The sparring ring had been set up. The human soldiers surrounded it, watching eagerly. They had witnessed Jacques' journey from an arrogant warrior to a relentless fighter. Now, they wanted to see the result. Kane stepped into the ring, rolling his shoulders. "You know the drill. No armor, no weapons, just your strength, your mind, and your will." Jacques took a deep breath and entered the ring. "I am ready." Kane smirked. "Then show me." The moment the fight began, Kane attacked. His movements were sharp, fast, a blur of muscle and precision. But this time, Jacques was ready. He ducked under a punch, dodged a kick, and countered with a strike of his own. Kane barely blocked it, his eyes widening. Jacques pressed forward, attacking with speed and precision. His body moved without hesitation. He wasn't just reacting. He was controlling the fight. Kane grinned. "Now this is what I was waiting for." He counterattacked, and the battle became a blur of fists, dodges, and powerful strikes. Neither gave an inch. But then Kane saw an opening. He threw a powerful punch toward Jacques' ribs. Instead of dodging, Jacques took the hit. The force sent a shock through his body, but he didn't back down. He grabbed Kane's arm, twisted it, and slammed him into the ground. The soldiers cheered. Kane coughed, looking up at Jacques with a grin. "Well, Dan." Jacques offered his hand. Kane took it, pulling himself up. "You win this one," Kane admitted. Jacques exhaled, feeling the weight of victory settle in. But this wasn't just a victory over Kane. It was a victory over his old self. The farewell. Later that night, Jacques stood at the edge of the base, looking up at the stars. His ship was ready. Kane walked up beside him. "So, you're really going back?" Jacques nodded. "My people need to know the truth. They believe strength comes from our armor, from our genetics." He clenched his fist. "But real strength comes from within." Kane smirked. "And you're gonna teach them." Jacques exhaled. "Not all will listen. Not at first. But I will show them." Kane extended a hand. "Well, if you ever want to train again, you know where to find us." Jacques grasped Kane's hand firmly. "Thank you for everything." Kane chuckled. "Go make us humans proud." With one final nod, Jacques stepped onto his ship. As the engines roared to life, he looked down at his hands, once soft, now hardened by training. He was no longer just a Selvar warrior. He was something more. As his ship soared into the stars, he knew his journey was just beginning. The end.